Hello, this is your 10.13 tutorial. To start with, we'll click on the A, then start New. In here, make sure to load the McFatter template folder. Mine's saved under My Documents in the McFatter templates folder. The drawing that we'll be working on today is a metric drawing, so make sure to load the McFatter ACAD ISO. From here, the next step I'm going to take, you're not going to have to do. I'm going to insert an image of the lesson that we're working on currently. I'm also going to turn off the grid so it makes it easier to see. So this is the drawing that we'll be working on today. I'm going to start this project on the top view. And make sure I'm work on layer 0. It's easy to read. First shape I feel is going to be the easiest one to start with is the circle. We have a diameter of 66.75. So I'm going to start the circle command as a diameter. And somewhere up here in the area, I'll select my base point. 66.75. Enter. And the other circle is a hole with a tolerance. Want to be between these two numbers. And do a diameter. 44.425. Enter. Now we'll fix that when we do our dimension. But if this was the perfect drill, then it would be that size. We have a distance from this center to the next at 50.8. I'm going to change my line type to center. And I'm going to draw a center line coming from here. Make sure ortho is on, so you're nice and straight. 50.8. Okay. Let's go ahead and put in the two circles that are here. We have a radius at 19 and a diameter of 17.5. Let's go ahead and start with diameter. Right here at the end point, select it. And we'll pipe in 17.5, enter. You'll notice that that line was drawn with the center line because I didn't change my line type. So I'm going to select it, change it to layer 0. I'm going to hit the escape key, and you'll notice it went back to center. That's because I changed the object. To make sure that the current layer you're always working with is always selected with no command active. Now I have a radius of 19. So I'm going to go ahead and do the circle, radius, go to the same center point, and type in 19. You'll see some straight lines coming back until it hits a fillet. So we're going to make this go to the circle, straight. The fillet matters where the flat is hitting the cylinder to curve up into it. We'll come to that when we do the front view. So I'll start here at the quadrant, pulling across. Now I'm going to go right past that circle, just so I have a way to trim that. I should do the quadrant, pull past, and then select there. I'll use the trim command, selecting the two lines and the bigger circle. I'm going to cut off the axis of the lines. Then I'm going to cut off this small bit of circle. And since I cut these two ends, I cannot cut this end here. So I'm going to right click, enter. I'm going to select this arc right here, and I'm going to hit delete. So now I have the basic top view from here done. Now I'm going to find out where the end of the piece is. So while I'm on layer 0, I'm going to draw a line, starting at the first center point, going to my right. The distance from there is 100. We'll type in 100. It's like 86. Cancel. What I'm going to do for that is I have 86 here as a number of lengths from end to end. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line coming from here, going straight up. And I'm going to just type in 86. So now that I have my 86 line, I'm going to select that line. You see this little dot right here in the middle. That's the midpoint of that line. Selecting that midpoint and then moving my mouse to the end point of the other line that I drew earlier can tell me where that line ends up going. And now I've placed that in location where it belongs. Next thing I need is a line on the top and a line on the bottom. At 73. So I'm going to just start a line from the end point of this, coming across. 73, right? 73. I'll do another one. Now you may notice that this right here doesn't line up with this. It'll come into play later, but just take note of it for now. All right. Now I need to round off these edges right here. They are a radius of 12.7. So I'm going to use my trusty fillet command. I'm going to change the radius to 12.7. Enter key. Then I'm going to select my first line, then select my second line. The command ends. So I'm going to right click, repeat fillet, select the first line, then select the second line, and it adds that radius in there. All right, good. Now this is a part that's difficult for most people to wrap their heads around, is that we have an arc that's tangent to this edge that then goes tangent to the circle. In order to make that tangent, To show you the process, I'm going to draw circles. The radius of the round that's tangent to the edge and then tangent to the circle is 22. So I'm going to start with a radius from the endpoint out, 22. Then I'm going to use the offset command at a setting of 22, enter. I'm going to offset the circle. Where those two intersect, that's going to be the center point for the circle at radius 22. And as you see, it intersects perfectly with the edge and the circle. I'm going to use the trim command, selecting this edge and the line, right click, and selecting this axis of circle. And that leaves that in there perfectly. I'll take these last two lines here out of the way. And there's the arc. To reproduce the arc, I could follow the same method of offsetting and drawing a circle to find the intersection, and then just trim again. But I'm going to use the mirror command, selecting the line that's here, using the midpoint, going from my right to my left, selecting that base point, and then hitting enter. And then boom, automatically I have my opposite side already taken care of for me. The only thing I'm missing now is this little rib here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw the thickness of the rib. It's a 9.53. Just going to draw a line from here straight down. 9.53, enter. And that's the thickness of my rib. I'm going to use the offset command from the midpoint, so I don't have to do the math. I'm going to go from the midpoint to the end as my distance. So I don't really care what the distance is, as long as it's accurate. I'm going to select the baseline, pull it down, then select the middle line and pull it up. And there's the actual thickness of the rib. I can go ahead and redimension that from here to here to see my 9.353. Without having to do any math. We use the trim command using this circle here to cut away at this line here and this line here. Now, even though this image here shows this curving, it's practically impossible to get this to connect in a correct fashion with this arc still being here. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut off this arc with a straight line coming across so we don't change our angle. I'm going to use the trim command using this line here to cut away at this arc. And now that'll finish off nice and smooth, the rib going against the cylinder face. I'm going to erase this extra line here. And I'll take out this line I use for measurement. I'll leave the center line in for now. But this is the top view. I'm going to go ahead and start selecting my line work, all the different line work except for that center line, and change it to an object layer. And escape. So there's the top view. Now I'm going to start using layer 0 to project my line work down, start making my front view. So now I have this line here. I'm going to use the copy command. Select that line. Any key points of interest, like quadrants, centers, quadrants, centers, edges, edges. I have an edge here as well. And I have another edge right here. See how close those two are together? Remember how we were going to talk about that later? It's going to be important. Also can use this as reference here. The endpoint where that becomes tangent. Then I'll start with a line going across all these lines here. Use the trim command, selecting these two as my cutting edges to cut away at the extra of the line. And then just so I don't get confused, I'm going to make this an object layer. Some other clarification that might help me with this drawing is any of the inside circles that I have projected down, I'll make them hidden lines. So this line here and this line here will be hidden. This line coming from my center and this line here coming from my center, I'll make sure those are center lines. Then I have these two circles here. They'll also become hidden lines. All right, looking good. Now you can see where those holes are being drilled, the centers, to identify them. Now, for the heights, I have my overall distance from the bottom up to the top at 57. So let me use the copy command. Select at baseline, right click, select anywhere outside the drawing, and then move my mouse up. If I have ortho on, doesn't matter if I go left or right. The direction I need to go is up. And I'm going to go 57. And that's take care of the first height. The second height I need to use is this 48 here. So while I'm still in the same command, I'm going to use 48. And then my last thickness is 11 for the base. And there's all the different heights that I need. So for the top circle, from this quadrant to this quadrant here, is going to be those lines. So use the trim command to identify those. Cutting this. Check and make sure I'm following the right one. This one across is here. And the bottom. So those are the two big cylinder pieces. Change those to object. Just a little bit easier to follow. Now if I look, this one goes from here all the way to the top to the bottom. But this one on this quadrant is going to stop when it hits this 48. So I'm going to trim that line where it intersects here, removing the rest of that line because it's going to stop at that surface. The edge of the surface ends here. So I'm going to use this line and this line here to trim this and this away, because this line from here to here is this line going down to that surface where it hits the 11, which is why I used these two cutting surfaces. I'll now select that and make that a object layer. And this top line where it stops here, we use the trim command, get rid of that. Don't need that anymore. And since I'm cutting, I'll go ahead and use this as the boundary to cut this. Now I have my diagonal that goes across here, connecting this edge down to here. So I'm going to do a line going from there to that endpoint there. Now you'll notice that even though my ortho is on, you'll see it going to those snap points because object snap breaks ortho. And I'll select that line type, and I'm going to change it to object layer. My last projected line is this one here. I'll use the trim command, selecting these two lines as cutting planes to cut away at that edge. And then I'll select that line and change it to object. Now this back portion here can get a little confusing. So the top surface is going to be the first line. And then this edge here is going to be the distance here. So I'm going to use the trim command, selecting this top line. And I'm going to cut this top edge here away, and then this bottom edge here away. That way I don't get confused with the two separate lines. And that line edge right here is going to stop at the top surface of this. But before I do that, I'm going to need to add the fillets. Okay, so for now, what I'll do is I'll do a trim using the top portion to cut this away. And I'm going to leave this as layer 0 for now until I'm finished with putting in the fillets. So for example, on this front edge here, I'm going to need a fillet. So I'm going to use fillet. The radius of that fillet is 6. So I select my radius, type in 6. And once I select these two lines from here to here, you're going to see it erases the axis of the line. Well, I need that line to still continue and go back to this line here. So I'm going to use the command called extend. Select this line, here's my boundary, and extend the line out until it hits this line here. Then I'm going to use the fillet command again, using the same radius of 6. I'm going to select this line and this line here, and it puts that round in. Now the edge I don't need is what's remainder right here, so I'm going to delete that. And this is where the surface runs in and becomes one with the cylinder. Now, it does create an edge going from here straight down. I'm going to hit that perpendicular. Make sure that you're hitting the perpendicular because you don't want to hit the end point and cause that line to be crooked. Okay? And now these two lines here I can select and change those to object. I'll hit the escape key. And so that's the surface I have here. It's the cylinder going to that surface with a fillet. And then as it comes across, because this is a flat surface right here, it just stops. So that fillet that's going and curving into here stops and runs into the cylinder that's going across here. Now here at the bottom, this is where the edge of this piece, this flat surface, which leads into the fillet here, which is round on this surface, you can't see it. It's this round edge right here. So it blends in nice and smooth. But because it comes to here, it creates a hard edge, and then it runs into a smooth round. And that's going to stop right here at this edge. So the length of the arc, It's a radius about here-ish. Then it's a straight line coming across until it hits this edge here. Then it's a rounded edge coming to here until it hits this line, and then it's going to stop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the trim command, selecting this line as a boundary cut plane, and I'm going to cut that edge right there on the top. And then I'm going to trim using this line here to cut the bottom of this. And I'm going to change this to a solid line. Object. And this right here, this line was just a boundary edge. Because it's a round smoothly going into another round, there is no hard edge. So we're going to delete that line. It does not exist. We can't see it. But it's the point of reference for this edge right here. Okay? And when we come to circumstances with this here, this is called a runout. In the book, it tells you to use a little fillet to show where runouts are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little line in here. And I'm just going to do a fillet. I'll keep it the 6 right here. You know what? Maybe 6 is a little bit too much for that. So let's go ahead and do another fillet command. I undid that. I'm going to change the radius to 3. There is no particular exact size for this because this edge is not filleted. It's just to leave a notation that it is a runout. And I'm going to take that line out there. For more details on this, you could discuss this with Mr. Rodriguez. Or myself. But you can see that right there. It's showing the tangency of the runout. All right, so now we have that complete. Now all we have to do is fix the drills. For the big drill, since it's all the way through, we're going to use the trim command, selecting the top and bottom of this, and cutting away at those hidden lines, leaving the hidden line going from the top to the bottom all by itself. And then this one here is particular because it has a depth symbol. So this drill only goes down 25. Okay? So to create that, we're going to use this line here. We'll use the copy command, copying it down at 25, enter. Right-click, enter. Once we get to here, we're going to put a little symbol in here to show the drill that's coming across. You don't have to do any particular angle. I'm just going to snap to somewhere down here, making an angle, using a nearest point. And then I come back up and click to that point there. This and this line here will be changed to a hidden line. And the line we copied down will also be changed to a hidden line. But we will have to trim it using these two edges and that line to cut away at its edges and cut away at the bottom of the cylinder coming down. So this right here represents the drill, the pointy bit of the drill that's coming down and drilling into that piece. Use the trim command, selecting this top line to remove these two lines coming down. So there we go. So now we have the front view of this piece here. Let's go ahead and complete the side view. In order to complete the side view, what we're going to do is we're going to copy. You know what? Before I go any further, something that we should have done at the beginning of the drawing, we should have saved it. I've just noticed that it's still labeled drawing 1. And if this was to lose power, then the drawing would not be saved. So let's go ahead and make sure we save this. I'm going to click the Save button. You're going to notice that it automatically comes up as Save As. Make sure to save this in your work folder. Preferably if you're working on Chapter 10, maybe a Chapter 10 folder. And the name of the drawing is 10.13. We'll go ahead and save that. Now you can see the drawing is depicted as the 10.3 drawing. So we can now continue with confidence that we'll still have our drawing. Move the drawing over this way with a copy command. Then I'm going to select it, and I'll use the rotate command. I'm going to use the projection point coming from here to here. Where I get my projected lines. And I'll use the rotate command from here straight down like this. So remember, this is 0. This is negative 90 degrees. I'll select that. Show snap reference was the projection lines that I was using earlier. So if you were not getting those and were confused, make sure that your show snap reference lines are on. They allow you to grazily tap on or hover over a snap point and then project across, kind of giving you a imaginary projected line. I'm going to select that object and I'm going to move it back to the left a little bit just so it's not too far away from the drawing. Now we can start the projection process, making sure I'm on layer 0. I'll then project any relevant lines. I like to start with the overall. Then I'll use the copy command and copy it to any quadrants, centers, endpoints, quadrants. The center is already being projected. Get this quadrant here. I also have this quadrant here and here. And that's the only ones I'm going to worry about for now. Now my lines went just far enough, it looks like. Let's take a look. Yes, they went past. If yours don't, you can use the extend command and extend it to this edge to find that boundary. Or draw another line down here. For example, I can just do a random line out here and then use the extend command to increase any of the lines that fell a little short. In the end, these will not matter. We'll be trimming them off. But for now, for the creative process, we want it to go past this bottom base so we know they're projected, not actual object lines. Now, any references to holes, I'm going to change those to hidden lines. Then my center line, I only have one this time, and make sure that is a center line. Okay, now I'm going to start my projection from my front view. Start at the top and come across. I'll use the copy command and copy to any relevant information. I'm going to use this cylinder since it's round. I'm just going to copy it over, so I don't really need that as much. Maybe I'll keep the center point just so I know where to copy it from here to over there. This is the run out. I don't need to copy this out because this doesn't exactly exist. I may be going a little far with this one. I don't know if I'll see that. We'll take a look at it once we get there. All right, but everything else has been projected. So we know our bottom front goes from the end all the way across to the other end. So I can start with those. Use the trim command, selecting the two ends to cut away at the two bottom lines. And I can make those object layer. I've identified where those lines are. And the two sides are only for that 11 millimeter tall object. So I could use those as cutting plane. I could cut those as well. So I'll use the two lines here as the cutting planes to trim this, 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 and this away. Then I'll change those to object layers. Now the big circle is going to be very interesting because it starts at the top, which is going to be easy for us to use as a trim plane. So we'll select that and use trim. Recent input, trim. And I'll select the tops away. But what's ends up happening is that it goes in behind this front piece of the object. So it's going to become hidden from here to here. It's going to right click, enter. Since I know that, what I'm going to do is going to use the trim command, selecting these two lines to cut away this and this here. But what I need to do immediately is go in and change to hidden line, draw a line from here to there, and from here to there. Because that part of the cylinder is hidden behind this front end. It kind of looks almost like a hammerhead shark. It has the big flat eyes and then the body behind it. So that quadrant is hidden behind that 11-inch thickness of the material. Since that's now been changed, I can now select these two edges and change them to object. I also know the top now. I can use those two object layers to cut away at the top. And I'll change that to object layer as well. So now that's taken care of. The hole with the hidden lines is going to be very easy for us to use. We just use the top and the bottom as cutting planes. since that hole goes all the way through. And we will remove the bottom and the top. These lines here I no longer need. Take them out. Now we start getting into some of the nitty-gritty of this. So we know we have the rib and this cylinder piece right here. So the rib is a small piece, and that cylinder here to here with the hole in the center. We have a couple different heights coming from here. This is the very top of the fillet, and this is the top of the surface. So the rib is going to be going to that front end to the top of the cylinder. The cylinder comes across, but then it becomes a fillet that blends in perfectly into the edge. But because it's on a flat surface, that flat surface is going to give us the illusion of the top height. So that means that these two edge pieces, here and here, when I use the trim command, I'm going to use the top to cut away at those two lines. And then I'm going to use trim again for this one here to cut away at the top of the rib. And then the rib and those lines will stop on this edge. So I use the trim to cut away them. All four of them, because they all stop when they hit that surface. And then I'll change all four of them to object layer. Now this being a run out here, there's going to be no line going across the top. So I'm just going to select that and delete this. And I'm going to use the trim command between those two lines to cut off the end here and the end here. That's going to change this to a object layer. This is the depth of the hole of the hidden line that I was discussing earlier. Since any view 360 degrees around this cylinder will demonstrate this, I'm going to use the copy command using that bottom point right there where the drill was fictional. And I'll copy it, placing it right there on the perpendicular where it hits the center line. And then I'll erase those hidden lines that were projected down because I confirm that they are the same length. And now I can remove them, leaving that cylinder cut in place. I can remove that line for the projection. Now there is one small little line in here. Not a lot of people will notice this, and it probably will not come out in your prints. But because the quadrant extends here, and then there's another edge that comes down here. If I look at the quadrant right here from that center, if I project it straight down, you'll see that it doesn't really line up with the circle. Very small detail. I'm going to use the trim command, select the top and the bottom, and cut away this and this here, leaving that little edge right there. It's that fillet coming in and then transitioning into the other circle. So there's a different depth here than there is here. And that's what we projected down. Do the same thing on the opposite side. So we have this quadrant right here for the circle. And if we follow it down, there's another quadrant right here for that round that's coming in, and projecting it down, placing it. Then I'm going to use trim, selecting the top and bottom to cut away at this and this here, leaving that extra hidden line there. And that's our front view in completion. What I'm going to do now is start cleaning up this drawing a little bit. Is going to use the offset command. Well, I want this to look good, so let's take a little measurement real quick. I want to see where our center lines pop the best at the distance they're currently going at. So what that means, I want to take a center line and kind of draw an estimated point, top to the bottom, to see approximately how far past I would like to go from here to here. So about 9. So I'm going to take this and delete this. So I'm going to go an offset of 9. Offset this line up, offset this line down, and this line up, and this line down. I do not need that above there, so that's fine. I'll make those with center lines. So what I could do now is use trim, selecting those lines that I just offset, and cut away at the excess center lines. Oops, I hit the bottom. And then I'll remove 1, 2, 3, 4 offsetted lines that I did. Delete those. And now my center line looks nice and proper for those objects there. This one right here is going to be very easy because I'll just do the same offset of 9. Just select here up, select here down. And because there's 2 cylinders in concentric in line here, I can just use the largest as my center line. And then I'll erase those 2 offset lines for that there. Now, office standards can vary for how far they want these to extend off. I did an estimate here to make it look nice and clean. So don't think that 9 is an exact measurement or anything of that nature. I just did what looks good for this drawing. Office standards may differ. So I can now go through here and select this object and delete it. No longer need that. I might bring this view down a little bit. It's not so far away. I'll take this center line out, and I can start putting in my center lines for the holes and stuff of that nature. But before I do that, let's make sure we save. And then we'll start looking at our sheets. We look at an A size sheet. Click double time inside the viewport. Try and center as best we can. And already looking at a 1-to-1 scale is not going to fit. Try 1-to-2. 1-to-2 does fit on an A size sheet. But if you can draw it at 1-to-1, so we'll try a 11-by-17 sheet. Click twice inside the viewport. That looks like it's going to fit. Should give us enough room. We can go ahead and use the 11 by 17 as a good sheet size. Might need to bring this a little bit closer together. So in the viewport, I'm going to select this object here and use the move command. Bring it down just a hair more. Make sure ortho is on. You do not want to be moving this around without your ortho on. I understand also could be a little bit annoying to see it with the grid on, so I'm going to turn the grid off. And I'll just pan this a little bit more centered. And there we go. Our drawing looks nice and centered. Now we can start putting in things like our dimensions, center lines, and notes into this drawing. We're going to go to Annotate, Center Mark, and select the largest circle. And I'm going to select the largest circle in this one as well. Right click. Then I'm going to need a dimension. So I'm going to go back to home. I'm going to do a diameter dimension for the outside cylinder. Now, I want to make sure that this is in ANO for the layer. So once I've changed that, I'm going to go back in and change the working layer to ANO. And it is a little difficult to see it in the viewport, so I'm going to change back to model space. Interesting. I wasn't inside the viewport when I was doing that. So let me select that dimension and get rid of it. So there's a difference if I put a dimension on the window or if I put it in the window. In the window, when I dimension it, shows up in model space, where this is on the viewport. And I prefer the dimensions all be in model space. Click outside the viewport, do select this, and delete. So I'm going to go to model space and start doing my dimensions here. So my diameter dimension for the largest circle. And then diameter dimension for the smaller circle. Now this one has the tolerance. So what I'm going to do is double click on this. I'm going to delete the text that's given. And I'm going to add a symbol, diameter, and type in 44.450, enter, and 44.400. So that labels my tolerance. I'm going to also hit the enter key, and in parentheses, H8 is the drill size. Make sure it's in capitals. All right, let's select out of that text. On this one, I'm not representing any of the zeros. So I'm going to select the dimension. And I might as well select this dimension as well, because I need to fix something on that too. Properties. I need to change the center mark to none. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave the center mark this time. I'll leave it as center line. This looks nice and clean. Even though it's not green, it'll still be fine. The next one we have is for these two. So this one's a radius. Oh, I forgot what I was going to do with this one. Click on this one with properties activated. The precision should be at 2 places. So we're going to go to primary units, precision, and change this to 2 places. And we'll close this out, hit the escape key. And now let's put the radius in for this guy here. Radius, select this one. I'll place it over here. And for the hole, I'm going to need that one as well. So that's a diameter this time. Let's place this below. All right. So that's good. Now, the precision on both of these, this one is going to 0 decimal places, and this one is going down to 1 decimal place. So I'm going to select the 19 first, right-click, Properties, and I'm going to change my precision here to just 0. That way I get just the whole number. And then what I'm going to want to do is change this one here to 1 decimal place. So I'll go down to my precision. Primary units, precision, at 1 decimal place. And now I'm going to add in some text because that is a depth symbol added in there. So let's click on this. I'm going to go to the end of it with the right arrow, enter, and then we'll add our depth symbol in here. Now, I know this won't show up on screen, so what we're going to do is go to Other. You will get a character map that pops up. Where it says Font, change the font to GDT. Once GTD shows up, you can then select on the icon that we need for the depth symbol, and then use the select button, then hit the copy button, then exit the character map. Once you do that, you can then right click and paste, and it'll add the symbol in. It automatically hits enter, but we're going to backspace once and then type in our depth of 20 5. Use space key in that. Some reason that changed our text height. So we'll get remedy real quick. Our text height right now is at 3.048. I'll select that and change that to the correct text height, which is 3.48. And then we'll click away. And that fixes our text height. All right. So now we have the depth symbol added onto that drawing. Let's go ahead and close up this properties. Now, if that wasn't complicated enough, you want to save, we'll make sure we'll save. All right. Next thing, let's just adjust this a little bit. Select that point, move it down just a bit. So I want to place the dimension for the rib here. Maybe I'll also adjust this and pull this up just a bit. And bring it over just a bit. Notice I'm just using these grips and selecting and moving them accordingly as necessary. Then I'll put in a linear dimension from here to here. And the precision of that is at 2 places. So I'm going to select it, right click, properties. Primary units, precision, set at 2 places. Escape key, we'll exit that. All right, so we have the rib dimensioned here. Let's go ahead and dimension the location of all the center marks. So we'll use some linear dimensions coming from here to here, putting a dimension there. We'll also put the overall to the end, from here to the end of the piece. Understandable that it's not a true overall because it doesn't include the radius, but for this purposes, it works. All right, got that, got that, got that. Let's show our radius for the edge here. We do not have to label that it's tangent. Tangent is understood. So let's do a radius, selecting the circle edge, and we'll place that dimension right in there. And that is no precision, or no decimal places. So we'll go right click, properties, and we will change our primary units to 0. Close that out and hit the escape key. Now that's dimensioned. We could also dimension with a linear dimension from the front end to the edge of where the tangent comes from. Labeling that. So we got those, we got our heights. All right, I think that's a good amount of information for the top view. Let's go into the front view, start putting some dimensions in. Put dimension in for the front end. It's also at 0, but I think I'm going to be finished doing a lot of that in a bit. So let me go ahead and get the overalls taken care of. Get the top cylinder height. You know what? Maybe I will put it over here, giving a little bit more purpose to the side view. And I'll also put the height from here to there. Now I could label the fillets. I think I'm going to put a dimension in for the radius of the fillets. And these, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are all going to go to properties, primary units, precision at 0. Just adjust this number just a little bit out here. Oops. It's doing that weird thing. Let's go ahead and escape, select it, and we're going to change this without extension line off. And that'll give us a little bit more control over where we want that radius 6 to be at. You can adjust yours accordingly. Once you turn that setting off, it causes the arrow to go to the fillet and not make that weird little extra circle in there. Escape key for that. All right, we got the whole dimension, we got the depth dimensioned, we got the height of this dimensioned, we got the diameters covered. I think that looks like about it. Let's just check our drawing real quick, make sure we covered everything. 48, depth, distance, diameters, radius, the rib, and the heights. 1, 2, 3. That looks like everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this little example right here. And I'm going to go to my sheet. And now, as if I did not put that example in there, I can go ahead and show you the really neat way of hitting the center scroll button twice to center your drawing, and then change your scale to what it should be at 1:1. And that centers your drawing lovely. So if you ever come across that point where you want to center your drawing, if you have nothing else extra on your drawing space, that extends the limits very nicely. All right, I'm going to click away from the viewport so I don't change the scale by accident. I'm going to also make sure I save the drawing. At this point, you're going to want to go ahead and start filling in the sheet 1 of 1, the project name, scale of your drawing, drawn by your name, and the date of completion. Once you've done that, make sure you save your drawing again. Then we're going to click on the A and go to print, continue the single sheet. And if you use the correct template, it'll say drawing to PDF. It'll be a monochrome drawing. We can then preview, see the drawing as we want. Then I'll hit the X. From here, you're going to hit the OK button. Once you've selected the OK button, you'll get a pop-up to save it as a PDF. Save it in the proper location where you keep all your other PDFs that you will be turning into Mr. Regis per his instructions. This has been your 10.13 tutorial, and I'll see you in the classroom. Bye-bye.